Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the May edition of the Data Quality Network meeting. Apologize for the late start there. We were having some getting the recording running. My name is Dan Berger. I'm coming to you from IU10 today. As a reminder, you can always find what we're looking for at the dataqualitynetwork.net website. Just as a reminder, a thank you, and a reminder that you can go to see recordings from last month's session we had from GDE. Today we're going to talk about some changes that are coming, reminders about the summer collections, and we're actually going to kick off with collecting some information from you about the DQN meeting topics. I'm going to go to the site and just remind us of the agenda for today under May. So if there are any of these handouts that you want to get access to, you can download them off the website. So that's the introduction for today. So without further ado, we'll send it over to Stacy to guide us through our activity about the future of DQN for next year.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming out to the May DQN. Before we jump into today's agenda topics, I want to take a moment to kind of look back over the past year and see what we're doing well and what you want us to do more of. So what I want you to walk away from this exercise with is that your input is greatly needed and extremely valued. So before we start this process, I am going to ask that you put your phones down and you close your computers and you kind of give me your undivided attention, so that way we can make next year's DQN exactly what you need it to be. So when you came in, hopefully your point of contact gave you some Post-it notes, and we're going to look at 5 legs of a starfish, and we're going to talk about what we want to keep doing, as well as 5 other areas. So the first area is, what do you want us to keep doing? So I wanted to start here because I want to focus on all things that are good about the DQN, our topics, our speakers, our interactions. So for this topic, I would like you to take a Post-it note and write out what you want us to keep doing. Is it interactive? Is it providing skills training? For me, what I found very beneficial this year was that special ed Kahoot that was done at the October meeting. I felt that it was informational, it was interactive, but it also helped me build my skills. So what do you want to keep? The second leg is, what do you want us to do less of? So this activity is something that maybe is helpful, but is not giving you enough information, or maybe it's not giving you enough skills to be able to provide the timely quality data that PDE wants. And maybe there's a small benefit, but not a large enough benefit. So what do you want us to do less of? The third leg is, what do you want us to start doing? Are there things that we're not doing at the DQN that would be more helpful to you? Are there topics that we're not covering? Is there skills that we need to help you build that you're not getting those exercises? Do you need more tips and tricks? Do you need more checklists? There really isn't a limit to your ideas here. So I just need you to think outside the box and don't be afraid to write down really anything. The fourth leg is more of. So what topics can't you live without? What topics are so valuable that you make sure you're at that DQN meeting? So that way we can give you more of that information. This will allow you to do your job better, maybe even more efficiently. And then lastly, what should we stop doing? This category is obviously for those things that aren't very helpful. What part of the DQN topics or speakers or training aren't helping you do your job better? What skills training is not helpful? So those are the 5 areas that I want you to focus on. We're going to go out. We're going to do local discussion at this point. My goal at the end of this 20-minute time frame is for everyone in the room to take those 5 Post-it notes and put one thing in each leg of the starfish. And what's going to happen with that information is when we have our planning session over the summer, we're going to look at all that data and we're going to make sure that we keep doing the things that you want, but we stop doing the things that aren't helpful and we start doing the things that you need. So at this point, points of contact, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to grant about 20 minutes, but if you would please check in on the back channel and let me know when you're finished, I would appreciate it. And I'll leave the screen up so that way you can see the topics. Okay, we're going to give it a minute or 2 longer, and then we're going to wrap up. And I have a couple IUs that have volunteered to share out. Okay, it sounds like we're about finished. I'm seeing in the back channel where most of the IUs are done. I've asked a couple of the IUs to share out. So Elena, would you mind sharing at this time what information you got from the exercise?
Yes, Stacy, can you hear us or hear me?
Yes.
Everybody good? All right. So just some ideas about what to keep doing. Afternoon local sessions, very helpful. Keep the collection reminder emails going. The collaboration with fellow school districts is essential and important, so that ties back into the afternoon local discussions. Keep doing skills, training, special ed, safe schools, and present the topics, informational necessary to or for PIMS calendar. Handouts, that's something they like to keep seeing coming out. Meeting with proposed changes. And then, so that was part of the keep doing. The less of ESSA, data security and safety. They're saying it doesn't apply to them, us, so to speak. So if we're doing less of, let's go over to stop doing. Stop doing EDNA, teacher evals. They feel that that's an HR function. Topics need to be relevant to the DQN audience, so stop doing things that are not relevant. Non-TIMS presentations, like curriculum or ESSA, that's what they're looking to stop. And stop changing agenda last minute. More of career benchmark collection info. More of safe schools, new requirements related to the PIMS collection, so more specific in that area. More of local discussion after DQN presentations, more sharing of presentation documents, training specific to software packages, like how to Power School IEP Plus and things like that. Then you have to come to our user group meetings or our conference in June. Thank you very much. And then more of FERPA Q&A. And also more details on why the data is valuable, how it's used. And I think that's very crucial because we have a lot of new people in their roles. So they need to understand how that data is working and what it's for. And examples of real life situations. Interactive discussion, so more in-depth training of safe schools. We're looking to start doing invites for PRRIs and APSs to get involved in the meetings. So we want to be inclusive. More build and advertise for ALIA contact lists. You know, that the PIMS at alia.com, but they're trying to start that piece, a lot more, trying to get more of that going on. Start doing, not all DQN members can attend Data Summit. So monthly DQN meeting attendees need the same info that's presented at the Data Summit. So that's something there. specific collections before they happen. So more of start doing that. Focus on upcoming collections in advance to open or to better promote more timely data. A DQN in podcast form. So that goes back to many not being able to get here physically on site at their IUs. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Jessica, would you be willing to share next?
I have to unmute it. Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we had a lot of pretty good things to say. We wanted to keep doing the frequency of these meetings. It's very helpful for the team to come in and have this opportunity to hear what other people are saying and to get the support for the upcoming collections. And also this group feels like we do have timely topics that are about the submissions that are coming up soon. So we felt that, we were pretty much on target with our agenda. We indicated that we would like to start doing more overviews of the reports that are available for PIMS and how to best utilize them to help our data get better. And we also said that we wanted to do an overview of all the submissions listed on the calendar to figure out which ones are required and which ones for each LEA. So not every charter here in IU26 has to do all of the submissions based upon their population. So we thought that would be helpful, specifically for Philadelphia County. We started with more of making presentations available online. I think that folks are also looking for some handouts, and I think that was already spoken of, where there's something to take away that we can have in our hand other than an agenda, and do more of some DQN rule overviews. And we talked about DQE and what many changes might be and how to best, utilize Sandbox and those types of tools to us. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jessica. The group here at IU24 stepped up, and I really appreciate that. So some of the items that they shared that they wanted less of was reading slides that are being presented, ESSA and PA Future Ready Index, less of trying to get administrators here. They want to see more of hands-on examples, demos of the templates, tips on how to handle submissions from experienced people, not PDE, more data governance, more building relationships with others, more Cognos tips and key reports to run at which times of the year, Q&A responses back on the group DQN website, more balance for newbies as well as your intermediate and advanced, data security in-depth discussions. They want us to stop trying to bring other administrators / people into the buildings, principal teacher evaluations, too many topics in one meeting. They also would like us to stop topics that are not related in the agenda and stop quizzes that take time away from the day just to fill time, make it meaningful. They want us to keep ahead of the collections, presenting about the collections prior, not during. They want to keep the PIMS information, the Q&A, the monthly meetings, the interactivity. They want to keep the PIMS updates and any changes to the collections. And they want to start looking at ways others are pulling data from their SIS, how they're aggregating it, validating what comes out, more checklists, more SIS specific information, more interactive time at the IUs to interact with peers, more training opportunities for Excel and tools to help with your job, and they want more LEA presenters. So that kind of leads into how I want to wrap this up. It's very important, obviously, from what I'm seeing and what I've heard, that we need more of our experienced PIMS administrators to step up and share how they do their job, share their checklists, share SIS-specific information. So if you're one of those experienced PIMS administrators, I would encourage you to talk to your point of contact and work with them on a presentation. You don't have to do it by yourself. Some of us are very comfortable being in front of the camera, others aren't, but we're here to help. But you have information that I believe could benefit the entire network. So if you would please share that you'd be willing to present to your point of contact, I would really appreciate that. So I do appreciate you as well taking this exercise seriously. This will give us a lot to think about this summer at our planning session in July. And hopefully next year's DQN will be more focused and will have the things that you want to be part of it. So thank you for your time and your efforts.
We actually have time for a break, so we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Help yourself. It's so true.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So we're going to start the next presentation here. We have Dan and Jody here from PDE, so we'll hand it off to them to do a brief introduction of who they are, and then we'll jump right into their special ed presentation.
I'm Dan Ficca from the Bureau of Special Ed.
And Jody Rissinger, special ed.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the July collections for this year in PIMS and outside of PIMS. Oh, and also one note, we heard a bunch of suggestions today, just briefly, about having LEAs come up and present instead of us PDE. So we're here at IU15, and we have a person here this is their last DQN, our IU data manager, Crystal. So maybe Crystal can come up and present.
Crystal, you want to present? You can do this.
I'm kidding. But she could do it.
She could do it easily.
Okay, so
Deserter.
standard rules for all special ed collections. District or resident submits. There are a couple exceptions. If students enrolled in a charter school submits. If the student is 1305 foster, then the district where the foster parent resides submits. That's it. Those are the only three. Districts and charter schools are the only ones that submit for special ed reporting, other than safe schools, but we'll get into that in a minute. Students that do not report, that you should not report students in state correctional facilities do not get reported, and wards of state do not get reported. Okay, the first one is the July exiting transition collection in PIMS. This has not changed. We want all students age 14 or older as of July 1 of the current school year, and any other student who has a transition plan. So chances are there's some 13-year-olds that have transition plans, maybe 12. So they would all be included. Every 14-year-old and any other student with the transition plan. So that's the group we want in the collection. All those should be in your template. Then in addition to that, if any of those students in that group exited special ed, then put the exit date and the exit reason. So there are a couple examples there that I've always used before. So so there's a 12-year-old with no transition plan, returned to regular ed. So they did exit regular ed. I'm sorry, they did exit special ed. They don't have a transition plan, so they would not be reported. There's a couple other examples there. Because I'm not supposed to read the slides. I try not to. Okay, some things to consider. Can a 14-year-old have a no in the transition IEP status code field? They could, but they really shouldn't. Most likely they shouldn't. Every student who's 14 or older should have a transition plan, period. They should all have a transition plan. Then if you answer yes to that first question, there's 4 other questions specific to the transition plan. Can they answer yes, they have a transition plan, and no to those other 4? Yes, they can do that. Chances are they would answer yes to one of them, but yes, they can. We also had to put a rule in place because there were districts answering yes to 73 through 76 and putting no, but they didn't have a transition plan. So you can't do that. So you'll get caught. If you do put a yes in 73 through 76, you'll have to put a yes in whatever it is, 45. Another thing, GEDs. The only way for the special ed collection that a student can be reported with as exiting special ed with a GED is if they receive that at a correctional facility. That's the only way. So when you submit everything during when the window closes between the collection window and the updated window, you'll get a list from us of all the students you reported with a GED. We're going to ask you, are you sure? We can look at the location of services to see if the student is actually at a correctional facility or looking at the educational environment. So they have to be in a correctional facility to receive a GED. All those students are dropouts, because you can't, in Pennsylvania, you have to drop out to get a GED. So that's the only way.
And you can't be enrolled in a school district.
Right. If a student graduates, report them as a graduate. If they are issued a diploma, they are a graduate. It doesn't matter how old they were. If they went all the way through till they were 21, met their IEP goals, and received a diploma, they're a graduate. They're not reached max age. There should be very few students that are reported as reached max age. I just looked at it the other day. Last year, I think we had 30 some in the entire state. There was some feedback. I don't know where it's coming from. Anyway, reach max age. Again, we'll send you a list. Are you sure they reached max age? Are you sure they didn't graduate? When you submit them, double check all those reach max age, because every year when we send it back, the district looks at it and says, oh yeah, they did actually graduate. So again, also look at your student template. When you upload your student template, if there's a G in field 65, they graduated. Okay, and again, if they reach max age, they're a dropout. That's right there. Okay, discipline. This is non-PIMS. This is table 9A. These are all the things we collect: removals, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, less than 10 days, greater than 10 days. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and it's on the Penn Data website, and we've been doing that for years, and that will not change. That will continue. Same with table 13. We collect students that were expelled. Did they receive services while they were expelled? Did they not? And we ask for regular ed students and special ed students. So that's all the same. That will not change. That gets submitted by the LEAs, by the charters and the districts to the IUs. The IUs upload, make sure there's no errors. That will not change.
Make sure when you're doing the discipline that the special ed office is aware of the discipline codes that are being submitted. We noticed a lot, and in talking with some of the charter schools especially, some of them are calling suspensions things that may not necessarily be a suspension. This discipline data moving forward is what's going to drive your significant disproportionality, and it's compared dually now with your safe schools. So it's really important that the data that's submitted through discipline is as accurate as possible. No comments.
Okay, again, the current process will not change. You're still submitting table 9A and 13. You can't hear me then? Already talked about this. The LEA submit to the IUs submit to spot checker. Once we get all that data finalized, we report it to the Department of Ed. We will do that again this year. 9A and 13 data will get reported to the Department of Ed. We're also doing in safe schools. Everybody should know this by now, hopefully. So I always get questions on who reports. Now this isn't, in general, it's whoever imposes a discipline, but that's not always the case. Again, if you're the LEA and you impose a discipline, you report it in safe schools. If there's a situation where the discipline, it's an IU classroom and the IU imposes a discipline, typically the IU would report that in safe schools on your behalf. They would put your sending LEA, charter school or district in that field in the template. I've heard across the state, some have different situations where the IU says, we're imposing the discipline, but we're going to send it all to you, district, and you can report it in safe schools. And that's fine. However you decide locally how to report it. But typically, it's the district or LEA that imposes a discipline does the reporting, typically. And again, school districts, charter schools, IUs, and CTCs are the only ones that report in safe schools. So if there's a situation that you find out about where one of your students was disciplined not from a district, charter, IU, or CTC, then you should be reporting that as the district or charter school. So here's some of the situations I just talked about. So if a discipline is imposed by a PIMS non-reporting entity. So if your special ed office or whoever gets notification that your student was disciplined somewhere else, you should be reporting that on 9A, as always, and also reporting it in Safe Schools. There are situations where there's an IU classroom in another district, and you're District A, and you have kids coming into an IU classroom, and it's possible that none of those kids are your kids, and they may break one of your rules, and they get disciplined. Well, you as that host district would not be reporting that in Safe Schools. You're not reporting that student for anything else in PIMS for any other reason. They're not your student, you're not educating, they just happen to be using your building. So if it's an IU classroom, either the IU or the district or charter school would report that in Safe Schools. We added a few fields in Safe Schools in the end, what we'll do is all the data we pull from Safe Schools will go into a 9A. So there'll be a 9A Cognos report created for you based on the Safe Schools data. So we had to add primary disability. So at the time of the discipline, what was the student's disability? And then we had to add for, if an IU reports the discipline, we need to know where that student came from, what district or charter school. We also added codes A and C, academic and student code of conduct. So every single incident, not just the 52 or 54, whatever those codes, how many there are, every single incident from S3 to S9, I believe, should be reported in Safe Schools, even if it's for an academic or student code of conduct. So as I mentioned, we're still working on it. We have live data and we've been testing it. It's close to being done. As soon as it is, we'll let everyone know. But there will be a Cognos report that you can run that will look exactly like your 9A. And they should be identical, hopefully. But again, if you're getting the data in and you're putting in Safe Schools and you're putting on a 9A, there shouldn't be any issues. If you know that the IU did it on, they would notify you somehow that the student received your student received discipline from the IU. You would still, the process before this would be you would put it in 9A, and you know that the IU is putting it in Safe Schools on your behalf. There will also be a report in Safe Schools that will show you the LEAs that reported discipline for your students. So if you see something that doesn't match, maybe you don't have it on your 9A for this specific student, you can look at that report and say, oh, this kid was disciplined at the IU and I didn't know about it, and then that's a communication issue locally, but that would be one way to know that why they didn't match.
And we're excited that they're all going to be done on time and they're all going to match.
We're excited.
I'm excited.
So at the end, you should be able, so you'll have your 9A, and then you can run your Cognos 9A, and then you can easily tell the difference. So we'll do that for the entire state and see where we are and see if there's any glaring issues, or if there's not, and then depending on what happens with that, we'll remove 9A and 13 for the 19-20 school year and just use Safe Schools.
Because it's going to match.
Because it's going to match. Okay. So
I'm
as you're doing it,
optimist.
yeah. So as you're doing it, get your Safe Schools data in, even if it's now, and run, well, I'm sorry, as soon as the report is ready, run the 9A and compare it to your local 9A and see what's off.
Yeah, with any of these, if you can get ahead of the game now, by all means.
And again, as soon as there'll be, I guess, some kind of email or something going out as soon as 9A is available. And if we know at a Q&A, we'll mention it then. As soon as we find out, we'll let everyone know. Okay, so other things that are not in PIMS, tables 1 and 2, this is for teachers and paraprofessionals. There's first of all, everybody needs to know that it's based on 12/1, not end of year. So it's as of 12/1, what were your counts, FTE counts for teachers and paraprofessionals. The definition, we're no longer using highly qualified, not highly qualified. They're now certified and not certified, and all those definitions are in the resource guide on the website.
Penn Data website.
Penn Data website. We're not saying Penn Data.
Special Ed Data Reporting website. The web address is Penn Data.
Yeah, I know. So table 3, related services. So these are the related services that the Department of Ed, the U.S. Department of Ed says we have to report on. We know that they're not, this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are the only ones that matter to the feds for reporting purposes. So these are the ones that we report, and these are fully certified and not fully certified. Timelines, so the spot checker for the July transition exiting collection is open now. And personnel, yes, and personnel is open now. The 9A will open in early June. So if you have files now, or if you know, every IU has different timeframes on when they ask for their data to be submitted. So if you want that, if the IU asks for that soon, spot checker is open now. And I'm sure if you want to find out if your data is clean and accurate, you send it to the IU. I'm sure the IU would send it up and get you feedback right away as soon as possible. PIMS Sandbox will open in early June. There are, of course, some rules in PIMS that we can't do in the spot checker, going back previous years, grade 9 entry date, those kind of things. So it's also good once you get a clean file through your IU with the spot checker to run it through the sandbox and make sure it's correct. There's the window for the submission. So one thing we have done in the past, but we're going to hit on even more moving forward, are timely and accurate. So if for special ed, submission window, submission window, submission window. Data should be in by the end of the submission window. If you're in by the submission window, you're considered timely. You can talk more, when I'm done, you can talk more about it.
Okay.
And then so then when that comes in, we look at all the data, we send all the things back to you, your data managers. Did this kid really graduate? Did this kid really get a GD, et cetera? And then during the correction window, you fix any things that you might have missed or that you need to update. At the end of that window, August 9th, you're now accurate. Anything after that, your data was not considered accurate given during the time of the entire window. Talk more about that or not? No?
I'm not a bully.
I'm not saying you're. So the feds ask us, there's certain things that we have to do.
You covered it. You did very well.
Okay, good.
I'm impressed.
All right. What else? Oh, personnel discipline tables are August 12th. And again, all this whole timelines are all on a chart on the special ed data reporting website. That's about it. There's the links for the how-to guide. I did make some change to the how-to guide, and I'm going to submit that soon. It's minor things. It's just wording for the most part, and a couple more Q&A things that have come up during these DQNs and during the Q&A. So I'm adding some things to that. And there's the link to the
That special ed data reporting website that says Penn Data.
There's us. And again, if you have a question, try to copy your IU data manager, because chances are it may be something local that they can give you a quick answer to, and we don't have to get involved. I'm fine. I mean, I get emails all the time. We both do, but that's no problem. But keeping the IU data manager involved will help them locally with when you have your local groups and you start talking, because I try to send them emails that get sent to LEAs. So copy them as much as you can. And that's it.
All right. Well, we will pause for just a minute or two to allow people to submit questions via the Q&A question submission form, and then we'll jump right into the Q&A session. Thanks. Okay, we will go ahead and start this Q&A session. So it looks like we'll go out to IU 21 for the first question.
Shane?
Can hear you.
You can proceed. He addressed the first question.
I can go a little further with this one. The only time you would report award of state for a special ed collection could be for Act 16. So if a student is not award of state at some point during the school year and then becomes award of state, you would report those costs while the student was not award of state. That's Act 16. That'd be the only exception. So at the end of the year, if they're award of state, you would still report them during the time they were not award of state for costs.
All right, great. Then let's go out to IU 9 for the second question. Do we have someone from IU 9?
Hear our question?
Can hear you now.
Okay, our question is, on table 3, are CODAs and PTAs included with occupational therapists and physical therapists?
All right, so if I could have the mouse. I have the mouse. Okay. Why did that go up? Oh, can I show this and it will
Yep.
share? How come I can't?
Sure.
Oh, because I'm on the wrong one. How did I
You're
get
in
to
the
that?
Word document.
Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Okay, so this is the actual Word document from the U.S. Department of Ed that we look at when we do our submissions. So this is the definition that they use for occupational therapists. If you want to send me an email, I can send you the link. So it would have to fall under that. Again, if you send me an email, I'll send you the link. But that's occupational therapists. Oh, sorry. And there's physical therapists. So those are definitions that the federal government uses for those positions.
So if those positions that you're referring to fall within these parameters that they're providing those services, then yes, you could. Everyone calls them,
So
defines them a little differently.
I guess our question is, because they are like an occupational therapy assistant and a physical therapy assistant, they may be providing those services, but do we include them under those titles?
If they're providing those services defined there, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then you'd report if they were certified or not certified.
And you're reporting their FTE.
Okay.
All right, great. Let's go to IU 5 for the next question.
Are there any plans for a Cognos report that will compare safe schools and tables 9 and 13 that would be more useful than comparing 9A to 9A?
No, comparing 9A data to 13 data? Is that the question you're asking?
No, you kept mentioning safe schools data matching up to what's submitted through special ed in 9A and 13. So is there a Cognos report that we can look at that would compare side by side the safe schools data to 9A and 13?
You can run a Cognos report.
No,
out of safe schools.
I'm not sure so you'll have your 9A data and you'll be able to run a Cognos 9A based on the safe schools data. And then you'll have both and you'll be able to compare yourself locally. Same with 13.
You wouldn't be able to compare them in Cognos because they wouldn't have the 9A data in the system.
Right, anything submitted through your IU to the spot checker, to the special ed data reporting people, it is not in Cognos. That data is
Right.
not in Cognos. So 9A, the way you currently do it, in 13 is not in Cognos, so no.
You would have to compare it external to the system.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, great. Let's go out to IU 23 for the next question. Is Theo anywhere?
Well, if they can't ask it, I could.
Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll ask it then. So will the sandbox be open during the 7:1 to 7:15 production shutdown?
No, PIMS is closed completely during that production, during the shutdown. Everything's closed.
Okay, great. So we are actually going to have a question here from IU 15.
So the first part of my question was, when you were talking about what to report, there was a slide where you mentioned exceptions, and you said that incidents that occur in your building, but the student is not a resident of your district, you're not educating the student. But my understanding, so is that specifically on table 9A? Because my understanding of safe schools is that if it's say it was a possession of tobacco, we have to report that for safe schools because it happened in our building, regardless of whether.
Even if it's not your student?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a safe school, it's a safe
Okay.
schools violation.
So you would have to do a student template for a student that you're not educating.
Well, you can put in just a name, like you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
On the
Gotcha.
person template.
So that is not your student, and you, under the special ed reporting rules, you would not report that student for special ed collection, so no, that
Okay.
student would not be reported.
So 9A would.
For 9A, right, or, right, correct.
Okay. Then the second question is, if we have a student who's attending, we have halftime VOTEC, halftime at our school. If they do something at the VOTEC, we are imposing reciprocal discipline. So if they do something and they get suspended for the days that they're supposed to be at the VOTEC, like the half days, we'll also suspend on those same days the half days that they should have been with us. In that situation, I'm assuming that we would report the suspensions, but only count them as like half days, not the full days. So if it was like a 3-day suspension, it would really be reported as 1.5 days.
Yeah, assuming that the CTC is reporting the other half
The
of
other
that.
1.5 days,
Correct,
exactly.
yep.
Now, this might be more of a safe schools question, but if the incident was one of the safe schools infraction codes, so again, going back to maybe the possession of tobacco, since that didn't happen at our building, do we have to report it as a possession of tobacco, or can we do more of a student code of conduct violation?
Yeah, you're right, that's a safe schools question. I don't know the answer to that.
And also, does it matter for the reciprocal discipline? Does it matter if it's if a student has an IEP or not? Like,
No,
either way, we would report
I wouldn't
it.
think that would matter, no.
Okay. All right. That was all.
I'm still optimistic.
All right, thank you. So let's go out to IU 24 for the next question. All right, do we have IU 24?
Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay. It's just confirming, we only report exited students if they were a transition student as of July 1, 2018, correct? No other exited students need to be reported.
It's all
We
students
only report
14 or
exited
older.
students interested. So if it,
Technically, that is correct. However, I have to word it, all students 14 or older who exited, because we have seen 14-year-olds that don't have transition plans. So it's all students 14 or older who exited. And they better have a transition plan
So if a
if you want to be
14-year-old,
compliant.
yeah, if a 14-year-old transfers to regular ed and doesn't have a transition plan, they should still be listed.
Correct. Any student who exited that's 14 or older.
Yeah. So they have a transition, if they're 14 or older, they're listed. If they have a transition plan, they should be listed. So those are all the ones you list. And then within that group, who exited, tell us who exited. So if they're not in that original group of 14 or older or have a transition plan, then they do not have to be reported for exiting. Does that answer your question?
And it is that date, correct? July 1, 2018.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Let's go out to Jane and IU3.
All right. Please, clarification on table 1, which states 3 to 5-year-olds. Do we include kindergarten teachers, as they can have a range of students aging from 5 to 7 as well?
If they're teaching 5-year-olds, yes.
So you just give that teacher the FTE for the percentage of 5-year-olds in their kindergarten classrooms?
Yes.
There you go, guys. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, great. Let's go out to IU6 for the next question.
When will we be notified as to which districts will be responsible to submit Table 8A?
Within the next week and a half. The pen link is at press right now to be released, and Table 8A is being reviewed for clarification on one field. So it'll be up on the website. I would say it should be up on the 2018-19 reporting information website within the next week. And then we'll send the pen link. As soon as the pen link's finalized, I can send the list of districts to the IU data managers. If you're on the cyclical monitoring list for this year and you know you're going to be cyclical monitored this year, advisors, I think, have already made contacts with most of the districts. So if you know you're going to be monitored, you're going to have to submit a Table 8A. I just don't have the final official list yet until it's approved through press.
All right, great. Let's go out then to IU25 here for the next question. We have IU25 available. Looks like they've got the last 2 questions. Danielle, it looks like we can't hear you. We'll give you another second here.
That I can do. It's the Zoom room mic. They muted
There you go.
everybody. Okay. All right. So let me get back and look at this question. Why do you not report Ward of State students, and what is the definition of a Ward of State?
Wards of state have their own specific funding stream. They're not eligible for federal dollars, so that's why they're not reported. I forget what it's called, tuition for, I can't think of the orphan tuition. So that's why they're not reported. As far as the definition, I don't know if we have a specific, Child County would probably have something, or school services. I don't know the exact definition of a ward of state.
Okay. And then the next question was, our district has some special ed students placed in non-PIMS reporting LEAs. I have informed our directors that these students need to remain on our rolls, reported as our student in a 9999 location, and reported on our student calendar fact template. Please confirm this is the correct process. Also, how should attendance be recorded if the placement does not consistently share attendance records?
So definitely students that you outplay should remain on your rolls, because if they're not and you're not reporting them, you're not receiving money for 12-1 or Act 16 or reporting them for anything for July or anything for Safe Schools. So yes, they should absolutely stay on your rolls with 9999. I don't know the answer to the attendance question. That's more of a child accounting, but I don't know what to tell you about the attendance part. Sorry.
Okay, so before we actually go to IU 26, we're actually going to jump back to IU 3. They had a follow-up question.
Yes, this is Jane. Jody and Dan, can you clarify, please, for the table 1, 5-year-olds on as of December 1st, 2018, is that the only population that would be percentage of that kindergarten population that would be included, or is there another age cutoff?
It's always as of 12/1. It's the teachers employed by FTE as of 12/1. This table collects 3 through 21. So it's the percentage of time, it's broken out. Why the federal government broke it out this way, I'm not certain. It is, and I'm looking ahead at IU 26's clarification, because they're following up then on this question as well. What's happening with this is we have to collect the FTE dedicated to these specific categories, 3 through 5, 6 through 21. We understand the K is an issue. So the only thing that you can do is give us the percentage of time dedicated to the 5-year-old kindergarten, and then the percentage of time dedicated to the 6 and 7. Honestly, we've been collecting this table forever. I wouldn't read that far into it. Do it as you've been doing it and don't try overthinking. It's the best I can tell you to do with it. I was truthfully hoping that it was going to go away this year, but it has not yet. So.
All right, and we'll still go out to IU 26, let them ask their question, even though you guys addressed as part of it.
Follow up as part of that.
A very big response in our room saying to do the kindergarten 5-year-olds and the kindergarten 6-year-olds. We've never done that way. We were told yesterday by someone from Montgomery County, that the 3 to 5-year-olds should be the pre-K kids and the kindergartners should be the kindergarten kids. The 6-year-olds. The 6-year-olds should be the kindergarten kids.
I didn't hear the first part of what you said.
We had a data summit yesterday with Theo from Montgomery County, and he was going over this information, and he advised us that the 3 to 5-year-olds are the pre-Ks and the 6-year-olds are the kindergartners. We've never divided our kindergarten population by age level.
Hello, can you hear me?
Because Philadelphia IU 26 was different in the past, what they did, we got that table from Elwyn.
Hello, Jody, can you hear me?
I can now, yes, Theo.
All right, just to provide a clarification on what it was that I said when I was at Philadelphia yesterday, I said that the MAWA holder for Philadelphia was Elwyn, and that it was my understanding that Table 1 was reported through them, and that the general intention, much like you said, was that the Table 1 was early intervention and that Table 2 was school age. Just to clarify what that message was.
Yeah, for Philadelphia, that's a totally different situation in their case because of Elwyn. I will go back, just to put clarification out to everyone. I'm going to go back and look at the federal form again. I've been meaning to look at the tables. So I'll go back and look at the federal form again and see if there's any Q&As out there on guidance, how other states may be handling this. Just to put the clarification out there. But for Philadelphia, like I said, that is an exception with them. We've always received Table 1 via Elwyn. For the rest of the states, I'm thinking that it should be the FTE by age. But like I said, with this much confusion on it, I will definitely go back and do a clarification again.
All right, thank you. I believe that wraps up this Q&A session and Jody and Dan's presentation. So we'd like to thank them for taking the time to come out here again. We really appreciate it. So what we'll do right now is we will pause just for a couple minutes so we can switch presenters here. Then we'll jump into our last topic with the upcoming PIMS changes for 1920. Thanks. All right, welcome back everyone. We'll get started with our last presentation. So today here we have Justin, Candace, and Tony here from PDE, and they're going to go over the PIMS changes for 1920. So we'll hand it off to them.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate all of your efforts and attendance this year through the DQN. As always, we thought it would always be a fitting way to wrap up our DQN year by having a session to go over all of the proposed PIMS changes and things we're thinking about tweaking for next year. As Shane said, my name is Justin Byler. I have Candace Felton and Tony Durante here with me to go over some things. So let's get started.
Okay, a quick bit about the PIMS change process. We've already passed the first 2 bullet points and we're halfway through the public posting and request for public comment period. Just a reminder, we appreciate your input any way we can get it, but in order to take your input into consideration when we're making final determinations about these changes, we need them to come in through the SurveyMonkey, for which we'll put a link out here at the end of the presentation. So again, this period ends at the end of March. May. May.
What month are we in, Tony? I'm lost.
The last one I paid attention to was April. Okay, so once we get your comments at the end of May, we'll take the first part of June to discuss your comments, look at mitigation, identify some changes, and forward our final recommendations to our executives for their review and approval.
All right, so let's kick things off with our first proposed change. This is for ESSA, Equitable Access, Educator Effectiveness. PDE will now be collecting all content areas next year, not just core content. And again, that's for educator effectiveness and the out-of-content teachers. We're going to align everything to the SCED 6.0 is the version. Which is nice because then you can go out to their website and you can check out the way they define each of the courses, and it'll help you align to your master schedules and course catalogs. This will all be updated in Appendix A of PIMS Volume 2. And again, we're just reiterating that next year you're reporting all courses, not just the core content. And to save the suspenders a little bit of a headache, we're going to accept the old codes and the new codes that come out. So we're going to have the kind of like Appendix A will be kind of like Sketch plus a little, because we'll align to all Sketch courses, but then there are some other additional courses that weren't in Sketch that we'd like to collect. Speaking of which, 2 of those are regarding our dual enrollment. In previous years, we've had dual enrollment categories for English, math, science, social studies, arts, technology, foreign language, and I think there was one more. We've gotten requests from LEAs that they would like to get 2 more buckets in there, dual enrollment for business and a dual enrollment for CTC.
So as far as the calendar goes, we have two areas that we're looking to make some changes as we roll into next year that we wanted to make everybody aware of as proactively as possible. The first one actually potentially has an impact for this year, is with regards to moving some of the previous year data collections. What we call previous year, essentially things that are for the school year that just ended that had traditionally been collected in the C1 collection. And what we're thinking about doing is moving some of those, not all of those, because that was a question that came up in some of the previous sessions, to the C5 collection. The idea behind this is that some LEAs have pointed out that they have this information available and it'll help to lighten their overall C1 workload by having the ability to submit some of this information more proactively so they don't have to wait for it all to be in the C1 window, which not only would help out LEAs from what it's been told, but it would help us then to guide LEAs to be more focused on some of the traditional C1 collections such as student and staff. So we are looking to make those changes not only for the 1920 school year, which is upcoming, but also for the 1819 year. And we are tentatively working towards that, so be on the lookout for communications with regards to that. The other main change is to streamline the C1 collection window for next year by essentially removing our PDE downtime during that. We think it'll be more effective in trying to, again, push the timelines, get the LEAs to be more proactive in getting their information in, and it'll allow a larger window, essentially approximately 4 to 5 weeks for LEAs to work continuously on getting their student and their staff and their traditional C1 collections completed. Some delete utility enhancements that we're looking to make. And these will be LEA deletes. That's why we wanted to bring them up here. The entire October student snapshot template, a single student snapshot record from the October template, the entire program's fact template, and student staff subtest records by student. Got that one. So the thing to point out here is that these are traditionally open when the collections are open, and you'll still have to follow the normal rules and guidelines for using the LEA delete utility, which involves completing the appropriate data quality curriculum courses in order to gain access to that. Shameless plug for that. We are continuing to push some of these deletes because we want you to have better control over your data so that you can be more efficient if you realize that you need a deletion or made a mistake and work through these. Again, some of these deletes are traditionally open during the collection time, so it allows you the same flexibility that we've normally been doing because you're working to get the data in and get it correct. So we want to push that and give you more opportunities to do that and be less dependent on us with regards to making some of those changes when you recognize you need one.
And the course they want to take is the Advanced PIMS Administrator course
Yes, thank you.
with the delete utility module.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is an error check. Right now we have one in place where if your LEA has already submitted a student as a graduate, we have an error check that comes up if you try to submit them as a graduate again this school year. What we're going to try and do is do the same thing except for cross LEAs. So if some other LEA submitted your student as a graduate, and then you later on in this school year then try and submit them as a graduate, you're going to get a DQE error. Again, you can put an exception. So if there is a situation where maybe another LEA did it incorrectly, we can look through those. There is an opportunity to go through them. I know Tim is very excited about that, but we're trying to catch the dual graduates and make sure that they are all aligned. And hopefully now that it works so well within an LEA, that hopefully checking across LEAs will make the data even cleaner. Another check DQE rule that we're going to put in place is that if a student is an 806 diploma type graduate, that they have to be grades 11 or grades 12.
Okay, our next change, we're going to be a little more specific about how we're reporting gifted students. Gifted students with a GIEP will be reported as you always have with a GY. Students who are gifted without a GIEP, we're going to split them into two categories. Students who are gifted and receive their services through an IEP, and students who are gifted but do not receive services.
We had some questions about economic status, field 33, and field 131, food eligibility. In situations where there are more than one LEA reporting the student at the same time, like for example, say maybe a CTC reporting at the same time as a school district, we're saying that there is no need for the LEA that's not funding, not providing the lunch to have to put in that free reduced lunch information because we're getting it from their LEA. Now, if you use this information, if you're using it maybe as part of your poverty indicator and you want to track this, there is absolutely no issue with you still tracking this. We were just trying to save some of these LEAs from having to do a report when sometimes getting that information between across LEAs is a little bit difficult.
So the entry dates for state, district, and school have been a continuous topic that has come up a lot from the LEA. So what we've tried to do this year is provide some better clarification surrounding these definitions. The biggest thing to stress with this is that these definitions are not changing. These are only intended to be clarification of what the guidance already was. Now, by saying that, we've had some questions where some LEAs have brought up certain situations and circumstances where maybe information they've received in the past is conflicting with that, which is all the more reason why we're trying to clarify this. We've run into situations where sometimes LEAs have struggled to how to define this information when they didn't have it available and there were recommendations given at that time. So what we're trying to do is clarify that better. And again, this isn't a change to the way you've been reporting these definitions. This is just a clarification of that. So first, for state entry date, the first date the student entered a public LEA in Pennsylvania. Do not use the student's date of birth. I know that was something that was talked about previously with regards to this. If a student left PA Public Education and then returned to any public LEA in PA, the date of the student's re-enrollment in that LEA. Another point to mention here is with regards to the fact of the term public. It is public LEA. There's been some questions around public versus private clarifications that maybe were provided in the past. It is meant to be public. So we wanted to stress that, which you see that 3 times now in here. One other point with regards to the state entry date before moving on to the other two, we recommend that if LEAs do not know the state entry date, because that seems to be the one that goes the farthest back with regards to trying to capture this information. The best information we can provide at this point is to continue to make the educated guess on the information you have available. And again, based on 7/1 of the school year, because that's the start of the year. Hopefully, if your situations arise with regards to this, this will help to provide better information or better clarification with regards to this particular one. So then for district entry date, the most recent date the student entered the LEA. If a student withdraws from the LEA and then returns, the date the student's re-enrollment in that LEA. Pretty straightforward. Then lastly, for school entry date, the most recent date that the student entered the school. If a student withdraws from the school, then returns, the date of the student's re-enrollment in that school. And then lastly, if a student changes schools within the LEA due to a grade change during the school year, do not update that school entry date. This was one of the common questions we received with regards to the promotions and different things that have happened during that year. And this guidance is specifically being put in to better clarify the concept of full academic year. So hopefully, again, to reiterate, these are just clarifications of the existing guidance, not meant to redefine this in any way.
Okay, we're going to update the verbiage in the PIMS manual for assessment participation for fields 214, 215, and 216. Y will indicate that you want to receive a pre-code label for paper and pencil testing. For assessment participation, field 212, B will indicate that you want to receive a pre-code label for paper and pencil testing for PSSA. M will indicate that you're online testing for PASA, and you do not want a pre-code label. And N will indicate PSSA online testing, and you do not want a pre-code label. We're going to have a new field in the student template. First year EL exemption. This will be a student who has been enrolled in U.S. schools less than or equal to 12 months by the end of the current ELA Keystone Literature testing window, and was not previously exempted from testing. This will be conditionally required for all of your EL students. We will have a DQE rule on this field. This cannot be greater than 5% of your EL students. Again, it's, if you have a situation where that's correct, we'll allow an exception. We'll have a new field for EL assessment. This will be assessment participation code 5. You'll use an E to tell us the student's going to be taking the Access for ELS test, and you want a pre-code label. A will indicate the alternate Access for ELS with a pre-code label, and O will indicate another LEA is going to be requesting a pre-code label, so you won't need one. I'm going to have some DQE rules in this field as well. This will be required if you have an EL student, status 01 or 06 in field 41. It must be null if this student is not an EL student. And we'll get an error if this is greater than 10%, or I'm sorry, if more than 10% of your EL students are flagged as getting an access, alternate access pre-code label.
Some additional DQE rules to talk about. And the first one actually is even more just of a notification at this point, no pun intended, as the slide says. But we've actually been working proactively to institute some email notifications for the 1920 year. And I'm happy to say at this point, we've actually completed that work, and they are what we consider to be operational at this point. They are in place. Some of you have probably been seeing them already. You've been getting them generated from PIMS and PA Secure ID to provide you notifications. So we're happy to say at this point that those communications we believe are accurate, and they are in place moving forward. It had been our plan to have it in place for the 1920 year, but we were able to get it up and running and kind of work through a beta testing period, and it's ready to go. A couple clarifications with that. While it is operational for PIMS and PA Secure ID, it is not operational for Cognos, and there is no intention to activate that feature for the email notifications functionality that is a part of Cognos that some of you guys are aware of. That being said, as always, with all of our communications and our standard public service announcement, it is tied to your email address that's tied to your UC-WAPA login for My PD Suite. So as always, that email address needs to be updated and accurate and valid in order to receive any of these communications that we're providing through the system now that we've turned on, or any of our other general communications from the Data Quality Office. With regards to some other DQE rules then, just some rules for the next two that are putting in place actual DQE rules for what we consider to be always business rules. Student template field 189, the funding district, to prevent the state code, and student template field 65, graduation status, to prevent the retired code X transferred from another school to in the same LEA because it's no longer a status code that we use anymore. Lastly, the student first name all finally matching the PA first name all in PIMS, or PA Secure ID first name all in PIMS. This is a rule that we've kind of been slowly piecemealing for a while, but it's a rule that essentially everybody would understand makes sense. The name you're using in PA Secure ID is supposed to match the name that you're using to upload to PIMS. So we're finally just turning that rule on all the way. We've been piecemealing it. This was essentially the last step, instead of matching on just the first three letters of the first name, to match on the full first name, last name, date of birth. When we've run some of our initial analysis on this, it's currently only affecting less than 0.5% of the current student enrollments. So we're ready to kind of take that next leap and fully turn that on. So please start checking that a while, as it is something that we are anticipating turning on for the 1920 student collections.
Okay, our next change, we're going to add an assignment code for the school safety and security coordinator. This is an assignment that's required by Act 44. You can see the details for this assignment in School Code, Section 1309B. This will be an LEA level administrator. You'll report this person in the staff collection, not in the Safe Schools end of year collection.
Another change with regards to actually, no, it's not, because it's not a safe school change. So, but this one is. So the safe to say indicator, Act 44 of the Pennsylvania School Code was amended to establish what they are calling a safe to say program. This program establishes an anonymous hotline for reporting potentially harmful, dangerous, violent, or criminal activities or threat of such activities in a school entity. So for the Safe Schools collection, then, what is being added is an indicator to essentially tell us that if the incident you're reporting occurs is linked to a tip that you received through the Safe to Say hotline, we just want you to indicate that that is the case when you submit that incident to PIMS. It will be a new field again in the incident template, reporter type code that we're hoping to identify as S to indicate Safe to Say.
There will be a field in the incident offender template called the primary placement type. It's just a yes/no indicator. It will work just like it works in the special education templates, same definition, no change to the rules. The reason why we need that is because just like disability and grade level, we need to make sure that we know the primary placement value at the time the incident occurs. We have a new unfounded incident indicator in the incident template to allow reporting of the fact that an incident was investigated, but law enforcement then determined it to be unfounded. This is to enhance congruency between your reports and the police reports so that at the end of the year you can come up with more of an accurate and more congruent data so it's easier for your information and for the sign off on from your local LEA to police departments. Due to the Consumer Pricing Index, this happens annually. We're updating the Appendix AJ for special education for PIMS Manual 2. They will be at a 1% CPI increase. You'll also know a slight tweak to the category descriptions. The codes themselves are not changing. They're 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we realized in special ed land that those codes actually are named Category 3A and Category 3B instead of 3 and 4. So we're just updating the definition behind the code. And as Dan had mentioned earlier, we know that for exiting special education, Appendix V, received a GED is only for students in correctional facilities. Again, this is not a change to the meaning or definition of this field or value. We're just putting a little reminder in there because it should only be used for students in a correctional facility. Due to federal changes, we'll be retiring approximately 50 language codes. No worries that there wasn't a lot, it was actually very minimal that were even used in PA, even in the history. So it shouldn't be too effective, but it will shrink down our Appendix J a little bit for us. And yes, everyone thought it was fun that I mentioned, unfortunately, that Klingon is no longer going to be a valid value. We apologize. And we were surprised that that was actually a valid value at all on the list. But no longer, sorry guys. Next is the annual update to industry credentials, Appendix Q. You'll see that we're adding, I think it's about 12 new industry credential codes with their descriptions and their categories.
Okay, we're going to have some new DQE rules for safe schools. Nothing new here in the logic, just we're going to apply some rules to them. Each incident must have an incident offender record. An incident victim must have a person record. An incident victim must have a person record. An incident offender must have an incident offender infraction record. And in the incident offender template, if field 10 arrested code is yes, then field 8, law enforcement notified indicator, must also be yes. A note about the rules. It's possible through deletions to more or less break some of these rules after your data's gone in. You're still going to have to run your error reports to make sure that you don't have any situations where you've broken any of these rules of logic. So Cognos report enhancements. We'll have a new duplicate staff report. We'll be updating the old HQT reports to meet the appropriately certified aspects of ESSA equitable access. And we'll have a new pre-snap and error reports based on assessment participation code 5 for EL testing.
So thank you very much for listening to our presentation. We'll take some questions then in a minute, but just to wrap up, again, as a reminder, our public posting comment period is always the month of May. These are all posted on the PD website, which the link is located there as far as the path goes. It's located under the PIMS document section of the PIMS webpage, and that's on the upper right-hand corner of that webpage if you're looking for that, because sometimes it hides a little bit if you're not familiar with it. Also posted on that website as well as here is the survey link in order to submit your official changes. And just to reiterate what Tony said in the beginning, While we have our RA account here for questions and we'll be available for some questions today, and we've done our webinars previously to this, all of this is good dialogue and we want to share that and give you feedback. But any comment that you want to be considered officially through PDE's formal process for making the determination on these changes needs to be submitted through that link in order to be considered. So please, please, please use that link. If you have formal comments, good or bad, that you want to submit, that feedback is what we're looking for to make the final decision on these changes. So thank you very much again.
All right, great. We will pause just for a minute or so to allow people to submit some questions. We already have, it looks like a good amount of questions in there.
Boy.
Oh, good.
So we'll give it a minute or so, and then we'll jump right into the Q&A. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll get started with the Q&A session. So it looks like IU24 has the first 4 questions, so we'll go out to them to allow them to ask all 4 of those.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. First question, what input will districts be able to have about the Safe to Say Something inclusion into PIMS?
So with regards to the Act 44 code, that was already amended and that is passed. So, I mean, that guidance is out there with regards to that code. And essentially, to kind of reiterate what we said before, is that this program is established through the Attorney General's office in order to collect this information. And that information is going to get linked back to the PIMS information. So with regards to, any comments about the inclusion in PIMS, I would say submit those through the survey because that's the type of feedback we're looking for.
Yeah, we're looking for comments on the how to collect it. Unfortunately, the whether or not to collect it is something that's already been answered and that we don't have control over. It's more now that we have this that we need to collect the data on, where's the best place for us to get that data collected.
Right.
And we thought incident template would be the best case scenario. But if you have better options, we're all ears.
Correct. I guess circling back to what I said, Act 44 was already amended. This is already in the code. So we have to respond to that appropriately.
Thank you. Unfounded incident code. If we use the unfounded indicator, do we need an offender and or victim? What other safe school templates would be required with the unfounded incident code?
If you have an incident that you want to report as unfounded, you're going to report that as you would if the incident were founded. You're just going to set that code, that unfounded code. That's going to allow us to not count that as an actual negative event, I guess is one way to look at it. This whole thing came about because somebody reached out to us last year and said, hey, the police found out about something through monitoring social media, completely unconnected to school, but they found out about a suspicion that something bad was going to happen at school. They did an investigation over the weekend and determined that the allegation was unfounded. There was no real threat. So police had an incident, the school didn't, and when it came time to match up their numbers at the end of the year, the police said our numbers don't match, we're not going to sign off on the ACS. So this is going to allow you to take their incident, put it into your system, so that your numbers match up where they're concerned, but it still doesn't look like you had a negative occurrence there at the school.
Okay, thank you. In looking at the SCED 6.0, there are several K-2 courses that are graded and used in different districts but don't fit that SCED definition. So will those classes need to be reported and we just have to kind of pick something that best fits, or is it okay if they're not reported?
No, I think you kind of answered your own question. You have to report them, and I was going to direct you to look at SCED 6.0 already, so I'm glad that you're doing that. But yeah, the guidance is going to be to align them as best you can to one of those course codes.
All right, last one for now. Gifted indicator. Is this for 1920 moving forward, or do we need to play catch up for any of the students that are in our building?
This will be for 1920. You don't have to worry about trying to get this into this year's data.
So anyone that's active in 1920 though, so just because it's not just new students. So anyone active in 1920 and beyond, you'll have to update that information.
So if we had a sixth grader 2 or 3 years ago that was determined gifted, parents didn't want services, we're gonna have to go back and get that information and enter it for 1920.
Right.
If you're reporting
them in 1920 school year and they're gifted and parents are refusing services still, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's go to IU21 for the next question.
Hello. Should the school entry date change when a student is placed in an AEDY program within the school district? And then conversely, change again when the student returns to the regular location of instruction?
AEDY programs within the district, those students should be being reported at their resident school anyway. So no, you would not be changing the school entry date in that case.
Okay, great. Let's go to IU6 for the next question.
If we've used the date of birth in the past for the state entry date, do we need to go back and maintenance those records, or can we begin with the new guidance for the next school year?
No, this question has come up before as well, and it is not our guidance to go back and change that information. At this point, we're just trying to clarify it moving forward as you make changes to your records for the 1920 year and onward.
Yeah, we do not want to cause extra work on your case at all. Again, this is used for full academic year. So just try to use the new guidance, which is the most educated guess based on things like PSecure ID, student records. Don't automatically go to that date of birth. And please use, if you don't know the information, use 7/1 of that school year of your best guess.
Okay, great. Let's go back to IU24 for the next 3 questions.
Will an LEA be able to query the grade 9 static table to check the graduation status of students as we can get their grade 9 start date that way? We can't hear you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Graduation status will not be added to the current static grade 9 entry date table. Sorry, I got confused.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is HQT coming back? If so, are you working with administrators to make sure they're aware of this as they're preparing scheduling for next year?
I'm going to try to answer that one. Is HQT coming back? No. Is there a process for appropriately certified under ESSA being implemented? Yes. And it is my understanding that, the PD has been working with administrators and providing guidance on that to make sure they are aware. Beyond that, I don't have any other specifics that I can probably provide at this point.
It's very similar to HQT. It's, for equitable access. It's whether your teachers are in or out of content area. So the way you're scheduling your courses should still kind of remain the same.
Right.
The same way you were thinking about, is my teacher certified or not to teach this course?
Right. Same thought process, just different guidance on how to interpret it.
Correct.
Okay, so for further clarification then, so if it's a math teacher teaching a special ed course, am I reporting the special ed teacher or am I reporting the math teacher?
You're reporting the teacher who is teaching the course.
Okay. If a student changes school buildings during the school year but does not change grades, should the school entry date be updated for reporting?
Yes, again, this is for full academic year. The only time you're not changing the school entry date when the student is changing buildings is if it's a mid-year grade promotion. That's the only time that you should not be changing that school entry date. Regular promotions at the end of the year, when a student goes from a middle school to a high school, you want to make sure you change their school entry date because they're starting a new school. If they go out to, let's say, a private entity for a while, they leave the school and they go to a private school for a while and they come back, you'd be changing the school entry date. If they go, I was going to say homeless, but that's not the situation.
How about if they relocate within the district and they wind up in a different elementary school?
You got it, and you're changing the date.
Right.
I'm trying to think of those are the most common ones.
I think those are pretty much.
If they're homeschooled for a portion of time.
Right.
And then they come back to your LEA, you'd be changing the dates. Those are the most common ones that we see for changing of the school entry dates.
So I got a little bit more clarification from the person asking the question. So if they're in elementary building A and they're evaluated and determined they're eligible for special ed, so they move them to elementary building B, would we change the school entry date?
Due to a programmatic change. Yes,
Yes.
you would change the, yeah,
I think so.
you're
Yeah.
changing buildings, you're changing programs.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to IU 26 for the last three questions.
I can get the
Where are we at? Okay, so the first question we have with regards to C1 to C5 has been answered, so we do appreciate that. Do we have any idea of when the new calendar will be published?
To provide, I'm assuming you're still talking about the C1, C5 stuff. We're looking to provide that guidance as soon as we can. Like I said, it is our plan at this point to try to implement that for the 18-19 end of year collections. So we're anticipating that shortly. That's why we wanted to bring that up as a part of this change, that it's not just being looked at for the 19-20 collections as much as it's being looked at for the 19-20 year-end processes.
You mean 18-19?
Yeah, so we're looking to implement this hopefully this summer, allowing you guys early time to submit the previous year collections for this current school year.
Right.
We will not be issuing a brand new calendar. We'll probably be issuing a small snippet or kind of extension of the calendar just for the temporary purposes. But for next year, you'll notice that C5 will be then located in the beginning of the school year for previous year collections, and then also located on the calendar at the end of the school year so you can start collecting early. So it's just kind of trying to open that up a little bit earlier.
I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing the follow-up, but I think you can.
Okay. Okay, can we move on?
Yep, you can go to the
Okay.
next question.
Fantastic. When we participated in one of the webinars to review the changes, we requested a crosswalk from the old course codes to the new SCED codes. Is that something that may be provided to us, or are we on our own for that?
Nope, it absolutely will be. I'm just not sure of the format yet. We're hoping that it'll be available at the same time as the PIMS manuals. That's our outlook at this point. But yes, we're looking to provide a crosswalk so it's available and hopefully help your SIS vendors get this loaded a little more easily.
Yeah, that'll definitely not be something you'll have to align yourselves. We'll make sure that that's available.
Right, and rest assured, we need that for us as well. So it's definitely one we'll be putting out there.
Yep.
Okay, we didn't hear you actually for that last question that you had.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're kind of in a, so we were requesting that crosswalk be provided to us in a non-PDF, and we want it in an Excel format, that way we can pass it on to our SIS vendor, so they can upload that.
It's just like how Appendix A originally came out. We're hoping to have the same type of Excel available, but it's in a crosswalk form.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
We just got a big thumbs up from Adrian on that one.
He's working on it.
And finally, we had a question with regards to access and alt access labels. Do you know what the impact is of attaching an access test label to an alt access test booklet, or vice versa?
I refer you to Bob Measle for that. Just in the general, I don't know that the labels that you get themselves actually look any different. It's more of an indicator at the testing level. So I don't think that there'd be any impact there, because the same demographic information will be on the labels, on both sets of labels. But again, that one's more as far as impact programmatically. I would forward your question to Bob Measle.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to actually keep it here at IU 15 for the next question.
Surprise question.
So for the safe to say where you said that you'd be reporting incidents that came across safe to say, wouldn't you still though follow the safe schools reporting rules where you're only reporting incidents that actually end up occurring in your district, like on your grounds? Like you're not going to just report any incident that goes like a party off.
No.
Right.
So if it's a safe to say incident and if it ends up in an incident in your LEA and it came through safe to say, you must report it regardless of it's 1 through 52, the safe school incident types, or if it's an A through C.
Right.
The only other exception is if you want your ACS reports to match your police department reports and they happen to have a safe to say incident that they end up finding is unfounded and you want to put that in, you could put a safe to say incident in and mark it as unfounded so that your numbers are congruent with each other. That is not an obligation to do so. That's something we put out there to help you guys out.
I think that's how I wrote it originally. I think that's how. That's kind of silly.
All right, great. I believe that wraps up this Q&A session here. So just to further what Justin, Candace, and Tony have said, go ahead and put any questions that you do have in that survey link that they've sent out so that way it's officially tracked so they can go ahead and address it. But we'd like to thank them for taking the time to go ahead and do this presentation. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and stop sharing here at IU15 to hand it over so we can close out this meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for attending.
So before we send you all home, just wanted to say thank you again for sharing. We will see you again in August. Do take advantage of the fact that your POCs are going to meet this summer to plan special things to Stacey for collecting all that information. All points of contact are going to send pictures of those sticky notes that you made to us. And when we get together in July, we're going to take a look at all the data you sent us and come back stronger than ever before August. So happy summer, and we'll see you soon.